Alright guys, welcome to Flavo Rihanna's MMA show. I'm your host Flavo Rihanna, brought to you by Four Corner Sports. Alright guys, so I know I said I was going to do the recap show for UFC 270 Sunday night. Alright, but I just couldn't get it done. I had a lot on my plate. But we're here right now. We're going to talk about UFC 270. Alright, it happened this past Saturday. It happened a couple days ago. So let's get right to it. Alright, so a lot was at stake at the main event. Alright, the two big eye-openers for this card was the main event and the co-main event. Two title fights. The main event had the heavyweight title fight. The co-main event had the flyweight title fight. Okay, a lot of cancellations. A lot of fights were canceled. And it was a little bit frustrating just because, like, we almost didn't have Michelle Pieta. Going into Friday night, we didn't have Ilia Topuria, I believe, because of medical issues. I would have loved to see Ilia Topuria versus Charles Jourdain. All right, that was one fight that we didn't have on that card. Remember, we were supposed to have Greg Hardy versus Alexei Oleinik, and then it turned into Greg Hardy versus Sergey Spivak. And yeah, guys, it just ended up turning out to being the only two fights that had ranked fighter. Was the main event and the co-main event. But it was a very good card. It was something that a lot of people, were very interested upon. We had, young prospects like Michael Moreno making his UFC debut, opening up the main card, and wow, that was a good opening card right there. I was definitely hyped. As you guys know, I'm half Ecuadorian. I'm also half Colombian, so I was heavily rooting for Michael Morales. All right, but we'll talk about the main event, the co-main event, the Michelle Pieta fight, and the Said Nurmagomedov fight. All right, so let's get to it. Main event, Francis Ngannou. Ngannou comes in with a lot at stake. Yes, this is the last fight on his current deal, but he also has at stake that, he wants to go into the last fight of his deal with a lot of leverage. All right, he feels like that's very, very important to him. He wants to be able to box, all right, which is something that I religiously hate about MMA fighters. I blame Conor McGregor so much for this. For the reason being is because a lot of fighters think that just because he was able to do it, that every other fighter is able to do it as well. No, you are not going to be able to do that. Kamaru Usman in the past had called out Canelo Alvarez, saying that he's scared of him. We've had fighters that wanting to jump into boxing just because of the big payday. It's just like, it's not going to work that way. Okay, it's really not going to work that way. And it worked for Conor. It may not work for everybody else. And for that same reason, MMA fighters should stick with MMA. Boxers should just stick to boxing. Okay. He had a lot of pressure. Plus the rivalry between Francis Ngannou and his old head coach, Ferdinand Lopez. I mean, Ferdinand was the one that got him into MMA. He's the one that ended up bringing him into the MMA factory in Paris. Okay, was able to rise him up the ranks, and then was able to introduce him into the UFC. Well, the UFC ended up finding him, and then he rolls him up the ranks into a title shot against Stipe Miocic. All right, which he ended up losing. All right, and that was the first time that we've ever seen Francis Ngannou look very mortal. Okay, he looked very out of breath. The cardio was just simply not there. Me personally, from the outside looking in, the fact that he is so built, he's so chiseled, has so much muscle, all right, that's taking a lot of oxygen from him, all right, because if you have so much muscle, if you have so much mass, you're going to need to constantly, have the right amount of oxygen, the right amount of proper deep breaths that you're going to be taking in to not feel so fatigued out. And you know what? Just like in the Stipe Miocic fight, we ended up seeing that in this fight too, all right? And he also, like I said, he had the pressure of going in there with the last fight. He wanted to win. He wanted to make sure he had some type of leverage. He didn't want to lose to his old coach, all right? And then obviously the storylines that the media and Ferdinand Lopez were talking about, that Francis got dropped by Ciryl Gane. They were teammates and now they're enemies and stuff like that. But Francis is like, I don't have anything against Ciryl. I only have something against Ferdinand. So there was a lot at stake. Round 1 and 2 looked like a very typical Ciryl Gane fight. It looks something like we ended up seeing in the Jairzinho Rosenstrike fight against Ciryl Gane, and also when Ciryl Gane ended up facing Alexander Volkov, up until he ended up exploding and was able to pick his shots from the outside. And Francis didn't really have any type of answers for Ciryl Gane, because he had a hard time closing distance. By the middle of the second round, he was already breathing out of his mouth heavily, looked like he was gassed. And going into round 3, he needed to get something done. And what does he end up doing? He ends up catching the leg by Ciryl Gane and slamming him. First fighter to ever take down Ciryl Gane. And I believe that was like the second takedown in Francis Ngannou's career. So he was able to control, and he was able to secure the victory of round 3. Rounds 4 and 5, he needed to do something. He needed to keep up that type of pressure. And he noticed that he ended up breaking Ciryl Gane with his wrestling, because in my opinion, and this is just my humble opinion, I think Ferdinand Lopez didn't put that into any type of question. All right, will Francis go for a wrestling move? Will he try to go for a double leg? Will he try to go for a single leg? Will he try to ground my challenger? All right, trying to compete for the title and just try to pin him down. I'm pretty sure if Lopez didn't think of that, then Ciryl Gane didn't think of that, and then obviously the public. All right, if you go onto the sports book of DraftKings, you will see that if you had Francis Ngannou winning by decision, it was plus 1,200. So that's something that you're most likely not going to end up seeing, just because Francis Ngannou, when he touches you, he ends up knocking you out. He ends up hurting you. All right, he ends up putting you in a place where you do not want to be at, and you're most likely, next time you wake up, you're going to be waking up with the lights staring right at you, and you're looking up into the ceiling. All right, so going around 3, 4, and 5, Ngannou ends up utilizing his wrestling. He was able to tire out Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane wasn't able to fight within range, and Ciryl Gane looked heavily gassed. He looked heavily gassed after the 5th round. Not something that he's possibly has trained for. Wrestling, I know wrestling takes a lot of your cardio, a lot. Trust me, I would know this type of stuff too, because if I have to start grappling, all right, I know that my cardio tank better be good, because if not, then I'm gonna be toast. Main event was not what we expected. I know a lot of people were expecting like fireworks and stuff like that. I expected it to be a very boring fight, going in. Something that we ended up seeing. I think Ryan Fredericks from MMA Decisions was one of them that ended up tweeting out something along the lines that if Ciryl Gane does win the title, I think the UFC will be seeing a lot of boring title defenses, and that's something that we ended up seeing for the first 10 minutes. And then Francis Ngannou was able to get a win of trying to get a hold of Ciryl Gane, was able to close the gap, was able to cut off the octagon, and was able to at least hold him down, smash him, was able to, rough him up, and it worked out, and it was a perfect game plan. Eric Nixick, Dewey Cooper, all right, and those guys, they deserve so much credit for molding Francis Ngannou from what the guy that he was when he first fought for the title to where he is right now. Excellent work by the team at Extreme Couture. They clearly know what they're doing. They clearly have a game plan, and they clearly were the better overall team as opposed to the guys from MMA Factory. My only thing is that I feel like Ciryl Gane, he might be 2 or 3 fights away from fighting for a title. He's still young. He's only 31 years old. He will be able to get back into the title picture. Moving on to the co-main event, we had Brandon Moreno versus Deiveson Figueiredo. The trilogy, guys, the trilogy. All right. To be honest, this is the fight that I was heavily looking forward to, just because of the fact that after 2 fights, we still didn't know who exactly was the better fighter. And after 3 fights, honestly, like, I didn't even know who was still the best fighter, just because it was a back and forth, nip and tuck. All right. Figueiredo goes into the same stance that Henry Cejudo goes into when he's trying to limit Dominic Cruz and try to keep him from bouncing around and having so much movement. And Figueiredo was following that same game plan, attacking the lead leg, and Moreno was just eating the shots and not letting the guy affect him whatsoever. After a while, it was starting to weigh in on Moreno. He didn't switch stance. He ended up just trying to defend the leg shots as best as possible, and it ended up working out well within his favor for the time being. But Figueiredo made huge adjustments with the guys at the Fight Ready team in Arizona, led by Captain Eric, led by Henry Cejudo, and the whole bunch. They took a very good approach with Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo in his last fight had a very difficult time making 125. He made 124 on Saturday, so that's a huge sign right there that, you know, maybe this isn't it for Deiveson Figueiredo. Obviously, he has the belt. He has to defend the title. Who's next? All right. Oh, I gave out spoilers. All right. So, Figueiredo looked great. All right. Round 1, I honestly gave it to Figueiredo. Round 2, I gave it to Moreno. Moreno was landing the clear, better shots when it counted most. I believe Figueiredo ended up leading the significant strike department, but I felt like Moreno, whenever he was able to get a good clean shot on Figueiredo, it was moving him back, and it was causing Figueiredo to wanting to get into a war. All right, and that, which is something that Henry Cejudo and Captain Eric were begging Figueiredo not to get into that type of war, just because he gets into that type of war, he gets clipped, it's over. I don't care what anybody says, it's over. In round 3, I would say for Moreno was winning the majority of the fight up until that knockdown where it looked like Figueiredo was gonna go for the kill. All right, goes in for the guillotine chokehold as was in the last final 5 seconds, and the time expires. And I'm like, wow, he stole that round. Round 4 gave it to Moreno, and round 5 another clear knockdown down in the last like 2 minutes. And you know, Moreno wasn't able to land anything egregious where it was going to have Figueiredo down and out for the count. I gave it to Figueiredo 3 rounds to 2. I think the deciding factors was round 3 and round 5. Seeing Figueiredo knock somebody down, it just showed that, you know what, that he still possibly has it, and the judges ended up awarding him over that to anything else. What's it called? Third fight of the card, we had Michel Pieta versus Andre Fialho. Great fight. Honestly, I thought Michel Pieta was going to be able to walk through this guy, just because the guy wasn't throwing any type of kicks or anything like that. He was very boxing oriented, but he stayed in front of Michel Pieta. He was pressuring him at all costs. And, whew, man, what a fight. I mean, we saw Michel Pieta do like a somersault kick landing on the forehead of Andre Fialho. Man, oh man, this was a great fight. I mean, Michel Pieta could fight a broomstick, and I'm still gonna tune in. That was a very exciting fight. Fialho was utilizing the jab. He was taking control of the fight, but then when Pieta ended up using his leg kicks to really limit, you know, how much this guy can really move going forward, and then he started blasting body kicks, front kicks into the guy's stomach. Oof, man. It was the beginning of the end for Fialho after the 4-minute mark, and Michel Pieta ended up taking over in round 2, and Michel Pieta ended up taking control of round 3, and it was a 29-28 victory for Michel Pieta. And then lastly, guys, we had Said Nurmagomedov. All right, the man is fighting at bantamweight. He ended up finding Cody Stamann, a veteran in the sport, was going into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak, and he really wanted to wrestle Said. He really wanted to maul him, but the problem is that you can't really go into Said Nurmagomedov's close distance circle because of the fact that, you know, Stamann was trying to go for the takedown, and Said just went for the rear naked chokehold, forcing what's it called, Cody Stamann to tap out. Everything lasted within 40 seconds, and that was UFC 270, the main card, guys. I mean, the main card was phenomenal, all right? I truly did like it. I know we got the UFC 271 in Houston, led by Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker. We have Derek Brunson versus Jared Cannonier. And then King Casey O'Neal's on that card against Roxanne Modafferi. So it's a lot of good fights on that UFC 271 card. But UFC 270, even though they had a lot of newcomers fight on that pay-per-view, it lived up, if not exceeded expectations. That's how much I loved it. And yeah, guys, I mean, it was really good. UFC 270 was perfect for what it was. Until then, guys, I am Flav Oriana. Thank you for tuning in to Flav Oriana's MMA show. Thank you for liking this recap video of UFC 270. All right. More news and announcements are coming further on soon. All right. So then, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button, guys. And I'll see you guys for the next one. Until then, peace, guys, and have a good one. See you.